I wish that there was a better way to say this, but having a very specific ironclad culture, right? Having a team that works really well together. The left hand knows what the right is doing. And so operations kind of plays into that. But ultimately, you need happy people. I actually think that internally, your staff, the people that work for you, the people that support your business, I actually think that their happiness probably ranges higher than even your clients. You need those people to be happy because those are the people that are front facing to your clients. So if you don't have a really good culture and a happy staff who enjoys what they're doing and really feels fulfilled and really feels like they are contributing to something and they're not just sitting at a desk, typing away or, whatever it is, they really feel like they're contributing, that they're a part of the growth of the business. That's really right there. That separates those successful advisors from the others.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Hitters Podcast. I'm joined today by Gina Ciampolillo, who was just coaching me on how to properly say her last name. Did I get it? Did I get it right?
You did it perfectly.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Gina has a lot of industry in the wealth management space, and she is a managing partner. She's a consultant. She has her MBA, and she has a couple things that she's extremely passionate about with regards to women, females in financial services and the lack thereof. But Gina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My first question is always the same. Tell us who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say I'm in wealth management. I've actually never been a financial advisor, but I've consistently worked with business owners my entire career. So I started off in banking, and that's when I began to build relationships with small business owners, mom and pop type shops. They'd come in to the bank and they would be looking primarily for business loans, which in banking, we really can't offer you a business loan unless you're showing at least 2 years of profits. So that's kind of what sparked my interest in what are the mechanics of that? How do you begin to show 2 years of profits when you just stood up this business? I found retail sales, which is where I started my career in banking on the retail side. I found it to be it's very widget driven. It's very salesy. And so ultimately, if I wasn't able to sell them a business loan, that's pretty much where that relationship ended. It began at the sale, it sort of ended at the sale. And so when I got the opportunity to move over to working at a large broker dealer, working with independent financial advisors who all own their own practices, I would say I really cut my teeth in that role. And again, it was really based more on consulting and relationships. So I'm helping them in this role do everything from not just grow and scale their practices, but I'm also, we're looking at their succession planning, we're looking at their technology use, we're looking at business development, client management, all these different facets of business. So that's why I like to say I really cut my teeth in that role. And then from there, I decided that I wanted to work for a founder and a CEO directly. And so I worked for a small boutique capital markets firm. And then I got this brilliant idea that I wanted to go back and get my MBA, given the fact that I was working with entrepreneurs now consistently and for the better part of 16 years now at that point. And so I will say that it probably would have served me better on a time management side had I decided to get my MBA right after my undergrad, but I didn't. I did it somewhat recently, and I decided to consult while I was simultaneously getting my MBA. So I graduated with my MBA last May. And I've been consulting ever since, working again with mostly independent financial advisors.
I do have a follow-up question. So you've obviously got a broad, view of the industry, having worked with advisors from all different kind of walks of life, but you also have experience at the 800-pound gorilla, which is LPL, and we're
Yeah,
seeing a ton of consolidation in the industry. I feel like either simplicity in the FMO space or LPL, or there's somebody who's buying somebody almost every day. Like,
yeah.
do you feel like that's a good thing? And then how is it affecting maybe the consumer or the broad scope of financial services?
So that's a good question. I mean, they were, we had a number of acquisitions even when I was there. So I, again, just talking about scale, I think ultimately it's a good thing because even since I've left LPL, they have created all of these different arms and affiliations. So they've actually maximized the ability or the ways in which that you can affiliate with LPL. So for example, if you started as an independent advisor, you own your own practice, LPL is going to be a good home for you and they've got tons of resources to support that. But if you're somebody who's coming from a wirehouse and you don't really feel comfortable kind of doing the whole brick and mortar, like, brick by brick, laying everything yourself and doing everything yourself, you know, that those acquisitions have allowed LPL the freedom of creating different ways and avenues in which financial advisors can affiliate with them and be supported in the way that they feel works best for them. So maybe that is, less independence. Maybe that's, maybe that looks like you do have somebody who's, hooking up the phone for you, or, that's a very old fashioned term, but you get what I'm saying. There's different ways that you can affiliate. So I would say that it's a good thing.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean it's happening in every element of the space. So it feels like some sort of large financial institution is buying another one
I
consistently.
would say just
Gina,
as long as you have the capacity to scale appropriately, which I believe
right,
that LPL does. But
right.
there are certainly examples of this where you're just seeing, firms gobbling up other firms, and then, they're very heavily weighted and they don't have enough infrastructure to support all that. That's when you lose everything. You lose the client experience. Internally, the employees are dissatisfied. I mean, that is an example of when it can be a disservice and actually pretty have a negative impact. But if you've got the infrastructure, you've built the processes and the workflows, then yeah, absolutely, I think it can be a really good thing.
Gina, this is the Big Hitters podcast where we talk about people doing big numbers. I think you're a big hitter based on just talking with you and understanding what you offer. But help us understand maybe the scope of production, either for you or for the advisors you work with, and yeah, just kind of top line, whatever it is you want to share about production or the number of advisors you consulted, however you want to kind of take that question.
Yeah, so I've worked with everyone. Again, LPL really afforded me a really vast scope of different advisors. I've worked with the very small single person offices. I've worked with really large, you know, RIAs or super OSJs who are just constantly recruiting. I mean, all kinds. In terms of my own production, I like to measure myself more on impact. What is it that this business owner, not just an advisor, but business owners in general, what is it that they need? What's going to help them grow and then scale appropriately? And what can I do to support that? So again, kind of going back to what I said before, that could be anything from helping them, streamline workflows to creating efficiencies. Maybe we're looking at the entity as a whole and what that legacy is, and is there an appropriate succession plan in place? And so how am I impacting these firms? And what does my impact look like? Because it's going to be very different if I'm working with, again, just a single person office, or if I'm working with a large OSJ or an RIA firm. It's helpful to discuss the way that you affiliate too. So if you're a pure RIA versus having mostly brokerage, that also is going to create different impacts, or my support is going to look slightly different depending on what your business model is. So it's very fluid, I think, and especially because I'm in the business of consulting, I think that impact can look very different depending on who I'm working with and what their needs are. So it's kind of
So
a broad brush to answer that question, very indirectly, but I hope that helps.
I'm curious to know if you, and I've kind of been consultative to advisors as well, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like what makes the good ones great, like what makes them, do big numbers, consistently be able to, be top producers year over year.
So there are several factors, and I don't know personally how I would weight which would be more important, because I think the financial advisors who have been the most successful have had it all. And so I would say a couple of different things. One is having I wish that there was a better way to say this, but having a very specific ironclad culture, right? Having a team that works really well together. The left hand knows what the right is doing. And so operations kind of plays into that. But ultimately, you need happy people. I actually think that internally, your staff, the people that work for you, the people that support your business, I actually think that their happiness probably ranges higher than even your clients. You need those people to be happy, because those are the people that are front facing to your clients. So if you don't have a really good culture and a happy staff who enjoys what they're doing and really feels fulfilled and really feels like they are contributing to something, and they're not just sitting at a desk, typing away, or, whatever it is, they really feel like they're contributing, that they're a part of the growth of the business. That's really right there. That separates those successful advisors from the others. And then the other piece that I think is, again, this is why I don't know how to measure this. I don't know would be more important, but I also think that you need clarity in your message. And I think a lot of business owners make the mistake of thinking that they're being really clear. But depending on the size of your business, you got to make sure that that message is breaking down to every single person in your office. So not just your top line, not just, what does the structure look like within your business, so that when you're talking about goals, when you're talking about vision, does everybody get it? Or do we have a number of conflicting priorities and everybody's just chasing their tail? Because that can happen to any business owner, but the most successful advisors have really figured out a way to hone in their message, make it really simple, really clear, and everybody is on board and everybody has the same understanding of that message. And it's really tricky and simple at the same time. And it's very hard, it's very easy to kind of get that wrong, or to even think that maybe you did an excellent job of communicating your message, but somehow something is still broken. I've seen this a lot, where a business owner will come to me and say something along the lines of like, so and so is just not getting it, right? They're just not getting it. And then as the consultant, I'll go talk to that person, and I'm like, well, they're not getting it because what you're saying isn't connecting to this person. You might have thought that you've communicated something really specific, but it's just they're not seeing how their contributions are contributing to the larger picture. So it's really about clarity and message and prioritization. And sometimes business owners, it's like the ADHD of owning a business. You have all these conflicting priorities. And I see a lot of business owners make the mistake of trying to accomplish the low-hanging fruit first because it's easier and they can just mark it off their to-do list. So a good example of this, and something that I've actually consulted to and I've witnessed, is being really focused on we need really big, pretty client events, right? But they have to still go through the client segmentation. They don't have client segmentation, or their clients are not appropriately segmented to make these client events be big and impactful. And I'm just using this as an example. There's tons of different examples of this, but to the business owner, it's like, it seems like that's the easier thing to manage, is to make the client event big and focus on that. But if you're not even, if you don't even know who your target audience should be and who should be actually attending those client events to make the impact, that's a good example of where I think priorities can get kind of mixed. So I think it's prioritization, clarity of message, and also having a really good, strong culture and happy staff.
Gina, we were just talking before this about what keeps you up at night, and you said really nothing. Well, so my question is, what keeps your clients up at night?
Okay, well, I wouldn't say nothing keeps me up at night. I have plenty of things that keep me up at night, but I was just thinking in terms of my own business. And that I can't think of anything that necessarily keeps me up at night, but I feel like the clients that I've worked with are, some of the things that are keeping them up at night are probably not things that they really need to be worrying about. I feel like a lot of advisors are thinking about where their next client's going to come from. And to me, I think the bigger issue or the bigger focus should be, what are we doing to impact the clients that you already have? And how deep are those relationships going? And how well do you know the next of kin? And how well do you know your own clients? Because there's plenty of opportunity right within your own book of business versus constantly thinking about, well, how are we going to market better? How are we going to broaden our reach? How are we going to, I think there's a lot of distraction out there. There's a tremendous amount of tools now. Social media is wildly impactful, and marketing and branding and all of those things. But so I think sometimes that all of that can kind of keep advisors up at night and thinking about, they need to jump on this new bandwagon. Everybody's using AI, and maybe I need to redo my website. And I think that if you just pull it back and just focus on making the clients that you do have incredibly happy, that in itself is going to be your reoccurring revenue, right? Because that's your referral source. So I feel like that's where the focus should be, but I don't necessarily think that's what advisors are thinking of, or business owners are thinking of when they think of what keeps them up at night.
I love that. AI. So you mentioned it. How are you using it now? Where do you feel like you could be using it that you're not?
So I feel like I've really started to kind of like dig deeper into how AI can better support the clients that I have and how it can help streamline workflows and build efficiencies within a practice. But I really feel like we've only just like hit the tip of the iceberg. I feel like there's so much more to know. There's so many more ways that we can be utilizing it. I do think that I won't speak, for everyone, but just from what I've seen, a lot of the business owners that I work with are a little nervous. AI makes them a little bit nervous. But for me, I think that, what a wonderful opportunity to kind of take all of these minuscule tasks that a lot of people don't like doing, and seeing if there's an AI, if there's a technology out there that can support that can streamline that for you. So I've really used it mostly. Well, I can tell you just in terms of research. I mean, AI is just wildly helpful. It just streamlines that whole process. Um, no matter what it is that you're trying to research. I mean, imagine how long that used to take, even in my own consulting business, how long that used to take to try to curate these different technologies for advisors and stay abreast on what is the most competitive, platforms and technologies and marketing that's out there. So I've used it to streamline my own research, but I've seen it be leveraged in so many wonderful ways. And I think if we can just sort of um, kind of diminish the scariness. I mean, everybody's like that though, right? I mean, it doesn't even need to be AI. It could be any new technology is always scary at first. But I love seeing how, showing a business owner how that's ultimately going to make your practice run more smoothly and be more efficient. I mean, nothing gets me more excited than showing someone how this can really help, your business, especially somebody who was maybe a little hesitant at first.
Love that. Is there anywhere in your business in particular you feel like you could be using it that you're not?
I don't do much content creation myself, but I've researched different forms of AI that can help my clients create content. But I wouldn't say that I personally create a ton of content through AI.
Well, Gina, last question. The floor is yours. I know you have something you really want to talk about today,
Yeah.
and I'd love for you to share a bit more about something you're really passionate about.
So I'm really passionate about women in the entrepreneurial and business owning space. But where I have witnessed a gap, unfortunately, is still in financial services and more specifically, female financial advisors. Um, you've probably heard this a lot. We keep saying this, but like, yes, things have gotten better. We're comfortable talking about the fact that there's a gap here, right? That there are less female financial advisors. And I do think that there have been strategies to help um, create better career paths. But I still feel like there is a gap for female financial advisors, but specifically for the next gen female financial advisors. So you got to think these are women who are just graduating college, and if we really want more women in financial services, we have to support them better because women are also thinking about, where their next dime is going to come from right after college, right? So how can we support them while they're building? Then these women are also thinking about potentially starting families. Well, everybody knows when you start off in financial advising, it's a grind. You got to build your book, right? So I think that grind is going to look a lot different for a next gen female advisor than it is for a male financial advisor. I don't know if I broke up at all there.
You did a little bit, but I heard you loud and clear, and
Okay, good.
I'll just kind of share that having been in this industry for almost 15 years now, every time I go to a event of any sort for wealth management or financial services, like I was just on a trip to Hawaii with had to have been at least 200 financial advisors. There might have been five females there, and it's an incredibly it's aging the industry, but male dominated. And the females that I know in wealth management, they do really well. And generally speaking, a lot
Well,
of times,
statistically,
like
they do the best.
they do the best. Yeah, they probably do the best. Yeah, because there's more opportunity. It's blue ocean for them. So I am saying amen to this cause because I have a daughter, Stella, who I'm thinking, yeah, I'd love for her to come work in the business one day and take over some of the book. I love that idea. Yeah.
I mean, and those are the
What,
women that you do see succeed because she's got a built-in career path. She's got a built-in mentor. But it's really
right.
hard for a next-gen female advisor to kind of find that on their own or to curate that opportunity on their own. We're also recruiting advisors kind of all the same way. And it's my personal opinion that you got to recruit female advisors differently than you recruit men because, again, their needs are different. And the support that they're going to require is different. The education is going to be different. There's going to be, a standard educational foundation for all financial advisors, but we really have to take into account that if we want these women to actually grow and stay with this business, then how are we going to support them through, marriage and family and kids and not all women want that, and that's fine. But there are women that do who also would make really fantastic financial advisors. What we end up seeing is that these women do eventually come back to it, but it's much later in their career. It's a second career. We see a lot of women who are having second career financial, becoming financial advisors. But what are we doing for the next gen women who maybe didn't want to have to, why are we not supporting them earlier so that they can go through their entire career building this business? What we're really saying to women right now, still, even with all the support and acknowledgement, is go do all the things you want to do first because we can't support you. And then maybe, in your 50s or 60s, if you want to do something kind of off the desk, you can come back to financial advising. Whereas men were like, hey, come right out of college. Come set up shop. I will support you. Here's your stake in the ground and you can stay here as long as you want while getting married and having kids. And, it's just, it's different. And it's a lot more challenging for women in that way. So anyways, I've officially gone off on a tangent, but that's
no, this
actually
is
something
great.
that keeps me up at night.
No, I love it when my guests get fired up. This is great. And honestly, it's a great cause. I mean, I want to see that as well. I want to see good female financial advisors. I want there to be a better pipeline. And I want that area of our industry to grow by leaps and bounds. Gina, a couple things. We have some financial advisors that listen to this podcast. How would they know, number one, if they're a fit? And if they were, for your services? And if they were, where would they go to find out more?
So anybody is a fit. Anybody is a fit. I can work with, I think as long as you're entrepreneurial in spirit and you really have a desire to grow, then I think that we could work together. And where you can find me, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. That's usually where I end up speaking to most financial advisors, most business owners is through LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to find me.
Awesome, Gina. Thank you so much for joining us and for all your insights. Awesome.
Thank you for having me.